So some of you requested a deck list for my Shinobaron deck list that I showcase in my Maxi video. So for this deck list, I'll go through the video in a few parts. The first part I would like to talk about is the overall design for the deck. The second part would be the core engine, the core ritual engine for the deck. The next part would be select core cards that I chose, select staples that I'm playing, and last part would be some cards that I could have played but I have chosen not to play. So for the first part on what the overall design, this deck is designed to go second. It's a blind second deck that intends to play against whatever your opponent board state is. If your opponent is back row heavy, you summon a particular type of monster to deal with it. If you are facing an opponent that is combo oriented, it's designed to play more select few cards to deal with the monsters instead. And once you're done dealing with that, you intend to leave your opponent in an irreparable state. They are unable to recover, hopefully, of course. This deck is not meta by any state, right? It is not the least consistent. It's not going to give you a lot of advantage, but it's purely designed just so I could play rituals, a dedicated ritual deck, and have fun. That's pretty much it. So when it comes to the core engine of the deck, we are trying to summon out two ritual monsters, which are Shinobaron Peacock and Shinobaron Peacock. Shinobaron allows us to bounce back up to 3 monsters your opponent controls to the hand, and then you can special summon one level 4 lower spirit monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. Because of problem solving card decks, it's important to note that if you bounce back monsters back to the extra deck, you do not get the effect. You must bounce back at least one back to the hand. And because of this line of decks ignoring summoning conditions for spirit monsters, it's quite important because almost all spirit monsters cannot be special summoned. The next monster, Shinobaroness, her effect allows you to spin back up to 3 spell traps your opponent controls into the deck, and then you can special summon one level 4 lower spirit monster from the deck instead. The spirit monster that we will be summoning will be Amano Iwato. Amano Iwato is a floodgate because when it's on the field, monsters cannot activate their effects except spirit monsters. So it affects the hand, the field, the graveyard, extra deck, the main deck, and the banishing zone as well. So both players cannot use monster effects from there. So your opponent cannot use Maxi, they cannot use Ash Blossom anymore. And as I mentioned earlier, spirit monsters cannot be special summoned, most of them. But because we ignored this, we can also avoid this last effect, where if Amano was normal summon or flip face up, we are forced to return it to the hand. Since it was neither normal summon or flip face up, you do not need to return it from the field. Instead, you can just stay on the field and act as a permanent floodgate. So the ritual spells that we will be using to ritual summon Shinobaroness and Shinobaron will be their archetypal ritual spell, which is Shinobird's Calling, and Incantation Inception. Shinobird's Calling, it's a regular ritual spell that just lists both of their names. And the special thing about the ritual spell is that you can also banish spirit monsters from a graveyard. So in this case, for their ritual summons, you can banish a mono or either both of them, because all three are spirit monsters. Incantation Inception is part of the Incantation archetype, which I'm playing 3 copies of Pansy Bloom, 2 Candle, 2 Bookstone, and 2 Talismandra, and 2 Cherry Slime as well. Inception allows you to ritual summon any ritual monster, but the only condition is that the tributes must be incantation monsters. The good thing about this card, right, is that you can recur it from the graveyard by sending 1 incantation card from your hand or face up, and special summoning 1 incantation from your deck, and adding it back. The good thing about this special summon 1 incantation monster from your deck part of the effect is that all incantations, except for the ritual monsters, have an effect that activate when they are special summoned from the deck. So if you do not know how incantations work, they have 2 effects. The first effect is that they have a hand effect where you can review themselves, and the second effect is when they are special summoned from the deck. For Fancy Plume and for Talismandra, both of their first effect requires you to review a ritual monster and itself, and then special summoning this card and another incantation from the deck. Whereas Candle and Bookstone requires you to review a ritual spell instead. Candle and Talismandra allows you to add from your deck a ritual spell and a ritual monster respectively, whereas Pansy Bloom and Bookstone allows you to add them back from the graveyard, being Pansy Bloom from the grave, ritual monster from the grave, and Bookstone for ritual spell from the grave. The other incantation that we are playing is Incantation Cherry Slime, which is just used to review themselves and special summon 1 incantation from the deck. But there is a condition that if you do not ritual summon after using this effect, you do lose 2500 life points. But this oftentimes do not come out because oftentimes you're just going to ritual summon after the summon. There is an on-field effect, but nobody really uses it, where you can just send 1 incantation from your hand or face up, so you can also send it from the field to target 1 monster on your opponent controls and just destroy it. So to wrap up the ritual package, I've decided to play 1 Preparation Rites and 2 copies of Pre-Preparation Rites. Preparation Rites is just meant to search out for Cherry Slime. But I didn't want to play more than 1 copy because I didn't want to play more copies of Cherry Slime. I want to find a balance between my ritual engine and all my other staples. So I didn't want to clog up my hand, right, with too many Cherry Slimes. And Cherry Slime itself can be easily searched out by Talismandra. I didn't want to play more Preparation Rites also, because if, let's say for example, I have already searched out all my Cherry Slime, Preparation Rites itself will be a dead card, and this deck tends to go into longer games, so that occurs quite frequently. Similarly, I didn't want to play too many. As I said earlier, I wanted to find a balance between my ritual engine and my meta staples. For a similar nature, I didn't want to play too many pre-preparation rites, because I'm only playing 2 of each ritual monsters for the Shinobaron package and 2 ritual spells. I didn't want too many ritual monsters in my hand or too many ritual spells in my hand that might end up clogging up or taking up space, whereas they could have been meta staples instead. So when it comes to select core cards that I've decided to play in this deck, I've decided to play Sabok the Mega Monarch into this deck. This card is effect, right, when it's tribute summon, I can target 1 monster on the field and destroy it. The additional thing is that if the monster I destroyed was a light monster, so I can destroy Sabok itself, right? Both players must send cards from the extra deck equal to up to the original level of the monster that was destroyed or the rank of the monster that was destroyed. So this can easily devastate a lot of combo decks that heavily rely on the extra deck. And another thing is that if you use a light monster as the as a tribute for this tribute summon, you could choose the cards from your opponent's extra deck. And during the choosing process, you get to look through your opponent's extra deck as well. So you can make key decisions on which cards to target and get deck knowledge of your opponent. You can get rid of the certain end board cards that they have, those very oppressive negate cards that they have in the extra deck, or certain extenders, for example, Helki Fibrex. So what we'll be sending from our own extra deck will be Elder Entity Nethers and Herald of Arclight. Elder Entity is just meant to destroy one card when it's sent to the graveyard. Whereas Herald of Arclight is much more important because you already use Tribute Fodder for Sabok. So you'll be using Herald of Arclight to get back Ritual Monsters or Ritual Spell once it's sent there. Since it's not once per turn, you can send all 3 and you get 3 searches. For Zabok's second requirement, which is if it was tribute summoned using a light monster, it can be easily met by using Fancy Plume or Candle because both of them are light monsters. You just need to make sure that one of the tribute is light, the other one could be dark or any other attribute.
The emotional whiplash I experienced when you both milled your extra decks. As a Synchro Queezer player, I was not okay when that happened.
So when it comes to our extra deck, the reason why we can use Zabok's effect efficiently is because we do not use our extra deck a lot. I filled up my extra deck with mainly cards that are just high in rarity for the sake of completing the extra deck to 15 cards only. This deck can play rank 8 monsters using 2 Shinobaron, either Shinobaroness or Shinobaron. Or you could play Nightmare monsters because both of the ritual monsters leave 2 tokens on the field once they leave the field. But it was my choice not to include them and instead focus on Paw of Extravagance, which allows me to draw more cards. In a similar vein to Paw of Extravagance, I decided to play Maxi as well. Besides being one of the most oppressive hand traps in the game, we do need the card advantage. We need the cards back in our hand because ritual summoning makes you go negative really easily. And for the rest of my core cards, I've decided to play board breakers in essentially. So Wing Dragon Aurora Sphere mode is a kaiju for 3 cards. You can tribute monsters from your opponent's side, 3 monsters exactly from your opponent's side, and summon this to your opponent's side of the field. So you can get rid of negates, you can get rid of indestructible boss monsters by just tributing 3 monsters. Another board breaker that I'm playing is Lightning Storm. I played 2 copies. Personal choice, I could have been playing 3, but 2 seems to not be really effective because from what I've seen, a lot of decks are playing monsters that cannot be destroyed by card effects. So I decided to cut down on that number instead. But this card allows you to destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls, or all spell traps. Another board breaker I'm playing is Evenly Match. So Evenly Match is a card that allows you to banish at about 4 or more cards from the opponent's side of the board face down, by just skipping your battle phase. Right, so if let's say for example your opponent is playing Eldritch, they just set 5 cards. During your turn, you can just skip the battle phase, end the battle phase, and activate Evenly Match. Because your field currently is empty, you can just activate it from your hand. And once you activate it from your hand, there'll be one card on the field, which is Evenly Match. So your opponent has to banish your their own cards face down to match their board to yours. Which means if they had set 5, they will need to banish 4, leaving 1 card on their back row to match this. This could be even more devastating, of course, if they have more cards on their field.
I'm banishing you to the Shadow Realm. No! Much better.
I've decided to play these two cards and Forbidden Droplets, because Forbidden Droplets helps me negate most of the effects as well. Forbidden Droplets itself is a non-targeting negate. Then I can negate multiple monsters as well. And Raid Reboot itself is meant to stop any trap decks. Once you have Shinobaron Peacock summon, oftentimes you can get rid of a lot of your opponent's back row. And from my experience against Eldritch, they do tend not to flip open skill drain immediately. So Raid Reboot helps by preventing the skill drain from being active, so you can resolve a Baroness effect. This is also a card that can just activate from the hand, so there's no real need to set it. But the final card that we do need to set is there can be only one, which is our other dedicated Floodgate. There can only be one is a very special type of Floodgate where each player can only control one type, one monster of each type. So, for example, if you are playing against Drytron, they oftentimes summon a lot of fairy monsters and a lot of machine monsters. Oftentimes, they will need to go through two, either alpha, beta, or whatever, 2 machine monsters on the field before they can actually summon. If they have two of them on the field, you just flip this open, they have to send one to the graveyard, and they cannot summon any more machine monsters. So the reason why we can play this, right, is because our entire deck, there is no duplicates of types. Including Maxi. Maxi is an insect, Pensiplume is psychic, Amano is rock, Kendall is pyro, Bookstone is spellcaster, Tennis Manager is plant, Zabok is thunder, Ring Dragon Ra is divine beast, Charisime is aqua, and the only duplicate is between these two, both the ritual monsters, because both of them are ring beasts. One thing to note is because of this token that's left behind, right, when they leave the field, it oftentimes conflict with there can only be one, so you just need to be careful on playing around with this, and you have to find a way to get rid of the token left behind before you can ritual summon.
Wow, it's quite pathetic how you draw 11 cards turn 1 and can't beat his board until turn 4.
So when it comes to cards that I could have played, but I just chose not to play, I would like to start off with Gizmek Uka. So Gizmek Uka was seen in my Maxi video. So what this card does is that whenever either player special summons from the deck, I can special summon this card from my hand. And once this card is normal special summon, I can target one monster my opponent controls. And then I can special summon one monster from my own deck that has the same attribute as the monster that I targeted, right? But the attack and defense must be equal. So, for example, in Gizmek Oka's case, the attack and defense are equal to each other. There's also the extra benefit is that whenever it's on the field, I can inflict 300 damage to my opponent for every time the normal or special summon a monster.
A few moments later.
お前はもう死んでいる。何？おわたくびでギゼブ。
The reason why I played this card initially was because Dennis Mandra and Kendall both are applicable for this criteria of having the same attack and defense, because all incantations are 0 attack and 0 defense. And Dark and Light, which is what you'll be searching, right? Your ritual monsters, your ritual spells. Dark and Light is the most two common attributes in Yu-Gi-Oh! But the reason why I stopped playing, right, is because there are not many decks that I'm facing that special summon from the main deck. If you like to see so far, what I've seen so far is Eldritch, that special summon from their main deck, which is a red elixir, which is quite surprising. But they do give me a search of Kenlaw. But because of that, I should not be running this card. Just dedicated to hoping that my opponent special summons from their main deck. Although I could just do it myself, I wanted to get the search off during my opponent's turn instead, because these effects of the incantations are hard ones per turn. Another card that I was considering to play was Pankatops, right? Pankatops is a very good go second card, but I chose not to play because it didn't give me as much advantage as any of the other cards that I'll be playing. Right? So this card is a good special summon. But then it doesn't give me as much advantage like Maxi, or I can tribute 3, or I can destroy back row, I can draw 2, or nearboard negate, or minus remove 4 from my opponent's field. It doesn't give me that much advantage as compared to the cards I'm already playing. And in a fringe case, it's a level 7, so I cannot use it for ritual summon that easily, because of this very awkward level mismatch between Pankatops and my level 8 Shinobaron and Baroness. So when it comes to other cards that I chose not to play, mainly are some hand traps, and the reason why I didn't play most of them is because it's the same reason as Pankatops, where they do not give me a lot of advantage as compared to like Maxi or any other card I'll be playing. So for example, Ash Blossom, it is a negate 1. Although you can, if you negate the correct card, it's quite good, but when it comes to the higher ranks, you honestly will be facing a lot of decks that couldn't be bothered even if you negate one of their cards. In the same case, Infinite Impermanence as well. Impermanence is also a negate 1, but nowadays most of the meta decks couldn't be bothered even if you negate one of their monsters. So to close up on this deck profile, some of these card decisions can be altered. It's not exactly perfect as of now because this deck was initially designed for a best of 3 in my locals as opposed to a best of 1 in Master Duel. Of course, there can be improvements to be made, and if you disagree with some of my choices, feel free to change them. But this is so far what I feel is the best.